Welcome back to another deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today we're cracking open a really interesting source. It's a market outlook report.
Okay.
And we're focusing on, well, maybe a corner of the economy you don't think about much. The global duct noise silencer market.
Right. Not exactly dinner table conversation usually.
Exactly. So our mission today is to go beyond just, reading the numbers. We want to really unpack the key trends, figure out what's driving the growth.
And look at the regional snapshots.
Yes, snapshots from this report specifically to give you a clear, insightful picture of where this market's heading.
And it's a market that, it touches more of our lives than we probably realize.
How so?
Well, duct noise silencers, they're essential bits in air handling systems. Think HVAC in your office building, right?
Sure.
Or ventilation in factories, even big AC systems in apartment complexes. Their job is, well, simple but critical. Cut down the noise traveling through the ducts.
Okay, so without them.
Yeah.
Lots of humming and rattling.
Imagine the constant drone. Yeah, the clatter. So understanding their market isn't just about construction materials. It's tied directly to infrastructure development and really significantly to how we regulate and manage sound in our environments. Noise pollution is a big deal.
Okay, got it. Relevant stuff. So let's get into it then. The report looks back at 2021 and then projects out all the way to 2033.
Right.
Give us the global headline numbers first. What was this market worth globally back in 2021?
Okay, so according to this source, the global market for these silencers was valued at $394.6 million in 2021.
Just under 400 million.
Okay.
And looking ahead, that projection for 2033.
The projection sees a pretty significant jump, actually. It's expected to reach $677 million by 2033.
Wow, $677 million. So
Accurate.
over roughly, 12 years? The market's expected to grow by nearly 72%. That feels substantial.
It is substantial. It reflects some real underlying demand.
So what does that break down to as an average annual growth rate, a CAGR?
Yeah, the report calculates a global compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, for this period of 4.6%.
4.6%.
And, for listeners maybe not steeped in market reports, CAGR is basically the average year-over-year growth rate over that whole period, assuming profits get reinvested.
Right.
So a 4.6% CAGR globally for a market like this, it indicates steady, healthy, pretty consistent growth. Not explosive, but definitely solid.
Okay. Solid global growth anticipated. But as we always say, the global picture is made up of, very different regional stories.
Always.
Let's start with North America. What does the report tell us about its contribution, its forecast?
North America was definitely a significant player. It represented a good chunk of that 2021 value at $112.9 million.
Okay.
By 2033, it's projected to reach $186.7 million.
So still growing nicely. What about the growth rate there?
The regional CAGR is just fractionally below the global average, actually. It comes in at 4.4%. So,
Yeah.
It's a mature market, but still seeing consistent expansion.
And does the report break North America down for the U.S., Canada, Mexico? Any surprises there?
It does. The U.S. is, as you'd expect, the largest single market within North America. It's projected to grow steadily, CAGR of 4%.
Okay, 4%.
But what's interesting is Canada and Mexico, they're showing notably faster growth rates. Both are pegged at a 5.3% CAGR through 2033.
Huh, 5.3% for both. That's quite a bit higher than the U.S.
Yeah, exactly. Now, they're starting from smaller bases. Of course, Canada was $16.7 million, Mexico $11.7 million in 2021. But that faster pace, it's just something specific might be driving demand there more intensely.
Right, so even within a region that looks fairly uniform overall, you get these pockets of, accelerated growth. Does the report give any clues why Canada and Mexico might be growing faster than the U.S. here?
Well, it connects it back to those broader drivers we touched on earlier. Infrastructure spending, updates to building codes about noise control, those play a role across North America. But the higher CGR in Canada and Mexico, it suggests maybe those factors, particularly things like rapid urbanization or maybe newer, more rigorously enforced regulations in certain sectors, they might be having a proportionally bigger impact on demand compared to the U.S. during this forecast window.
Okay, that makes sense. Linking the numbers back to the forces on the ground. Let's hop across the pond to Europe. What's the outlook there?
Europe's another significant market, valued at $90 million back in 2021.
Okay.
And it's projected to grow to $149.8 million by 2033. And interestingly, its regional CGR mirrors North America's exactly 4.4%.
4.4% again, okay. And within Europe, where's the action happening, according to this source? Is it pretty spread out?
It's quite varied, actually. The UK gets highlighted with a pretty robust 5.4% CAGR. That's strong.
Yeah, higher than the regional average.
Definitely. Germany, big economy, growing at a solid 4.9%. Then you have countries like France, Italy, Russia, Spain. They're seeing more modest growth, but still positive, generally between, say, 3.7% and 3.9%. But here's a really interesting detail from the report. The rest of Europe category.
Which bundles together a lot of smaller markets, right?
Exactly. That category is actually projected to be the fastest growing segment in the whole region. Its CAGR is 5.6%.
Wow, 5.6% for rest of Europe. So faster than the UK even. Why might that be? Are we talking like Eastern European countries playing catch-up or specific niches in smaller Western European nations maybe?
The report doesn't break down rest of Europe country by country, unfortunately, but that higher growth rate, it strongly suggests that either, regulatory changes, specific industrial developments, or maybe big infrastructure investments across several of these smaller aggregated markets, they're collectively driving a faster pace of adoption than in the bigger, maybe more saturated individual economies like Germany or France.
Interesting.
It really points to broader trends hitting multiple countries at once.
Fascinating. Yeah, it tells you where development or maybe regulatory shifts are happening faster.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift focus now to Asia Pacific, often the engine of global growth, right?
Absolutely, and that definitely holds true here. Asia Pacific was already the largest market globally in 2021.
Bigger than North America or Europe?
Yep, $129 million in 2021, and it's projected to reach $233.6 million by 2033.
Okay.
And its regional CAGR is higher than North America or Europe, too, coming in at 4.9%.
4.9%, so leading the pack regionally. And who are the main players driving that growth in APAC?
Well, China, no surprise, is a huge contributor just in terms of sheer market size. It's growing at a strong 5.2% CAGR.
Right.
Japan is seeing steady growth, 4.2%. But the report...
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Right.
Japan is seeing steady growth, 4.2%. But the report really points to India.
India.
Yeah, India's pegged as having the fastest growth, not just in Asia Pacific, but actually among all the individual countries specifically highlighted globally in this report. Its projected CAGR is 5.8%.
5.8%. That's the highest country-specific rate we've seen so far from this source.
It is. And then you've also got South Korea, Australia, Southeast Asia. They're all contributing with solid CAGRs too, sort of in the 4.5% to 5.1% range.
Okay, but back to India's 5.8%. That's notably high. What's behind that rapid acceleration, according to the report?
Well, this is where those key drivers the report identifies become really, really clear. That rapid 5.8% growth in India, the source material links it directly to the country's, rapid industrialization.
Makes sense.
And significant infrastructure development projects. As new factories, commercial buildings, transportation hubs get built, the need for effective noise control in their ventilation systems just surges.
Right, it's a direct consequence.
Exactly. And additionally, there's increasing awareness and, crucially, enforcement of noise pollution standards in India. That's pushing the market for solutions like these duct noise silencers. It's a really clear example of those big macro trends translating directly into specific market demand.
Yeah, that really puts the numbers into perspective. It's not just abstract growth. It's tied to tangible development happening right now. Okay, let's look at South America next. What does the report say there?
In South America, the report highlights several countries showing pretty consistent growth. Brazil is noted with a 4.8% CAGR, solid.
Okay.
Argentina and Colombia, interestingly, share similar projected growth rates, both at 4.6%.
4.6%.
And then Peru and Chile are growing steadily, too, both at 4%. So it shows a kind of broad, positive trend across the major economies down there.
And is that growth also tied back to the same big drivers, industrialization, regulations, in those specific countries?
The report's overall conclusion definitely ties the global growth to those key drivers, yeah. Now, it doesn't pinpoint the exact nuances for, every single country mentioned.
Sure.
But that consistent growth across South America, it suggests that similar forces are at play. Maybe localized infrastructure pushes or updates to building standards. They seem to be contributing across the board rather than it being just one or two isolated big projects driving everything.
Okay, that makes sense. A general rising tide there. All right, final region. The Middle East and Africa, MEA.
Right. Here, the report gives us a few snapshots. Egypt and Turkey are both projected to grow at a 4.5% CAGR.
4.5%, okay. On par with some of the other regions.
Yes. However, the rest of the Middle East category, it shows a comparatively slower pace. Its CAGR is pegged at 3.2%.
Oh, okay. So noticeably slower than the global average or places like Egypt and Turkey.
Exactly. So that suggests that while certain countries in the region are adopting these noise solutions more quickly, the overall momentum in other parts of the Middle East might be lagging a bit compared to the global average,
Right.
potentially reflecting, different paces of development or maybe slower regulatory adoption in some areas.
Got it. So, okay, we've seen the numbers now. Global growth at 4.6%, strong performance led by Asia Pacific, especially India, steady contributions from North America and Europe, consistent growth across key parts of South America and the Middle East, though maybe a bit patchier in MEA overall.
That's a good summary of the figures, yeah.
And we've started to touch on the why behind it all, linking these regional dynamics back to the drivers the report identifies. Why were they again?
The core ones highlighted are rapid industrialization.
Right. Especially relevant in places like India and China.
Exactly. Then stricter noise control regulations popping up globally.
Okay.
And third, just an increasing focus on sustainable and also comfortable infrastructure development. People want quieter buildings.
Right. So those three factors, industrialization, regulations, and this focus on sustainable or comfortable buildings, those are the core engines the report points to for this market's growth.
Precisely. I mean, think about it logically, right? Industrialization means more buildings, more facilities needing ventilation.
Yep.
Regulations come along and require that ventilation to be quieter than it used to be.
Okay.
And then the broader trend towards sustainable, occupant-friendly design means developers actively choose solutions that enhance comfort. And that includes noise reduction. These aren't like niche drivers. They are large-scale forces shaping the modern built environment everywhere.
It's actually a perfect example of how these seemingly small, maybe specialized markets are direct beneficiaries or maybe even indicators of these huge global shifts. You might not think twice about duct noise silencers,
Most people don't.
but their market growth tells you a story.
Yeah.
A story about where the world is building, how it's building, and how much emphasis is being placed on things like industrial efficiency, but also worker well-being and just general environmental comfort.
Exactly. It's a tangible outcome of these broader trends. You can measure it.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive into the duct noise silencer market outlook through 2033, the main takeaway from this specific report seems pretty clear. It's a path of healthy, steady global growth.
Yep, 4.6% globally.
Driven by these big forces, industrialization, stricter noise control, and sustainable development efforts, all happening in different ways, and definitely at different speeds across the world.
That's right. From the really rapid pace projected in India to the steady, mature markets of North America and Europe, the demand for quieter ventilation systems is clearly on the rise, according to this source.
And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with, sort of building on what we've just discussed. Given how this, seemingly niche market's growth is so clearly tied to massive global trends like industrialization, evolving regulations, the push for sustainable infrastructure, how else might we use the performance of these kinds of highly specialized, almost hidden markets as maybe leading indicators?
Interesting question.
What other components or services, things that go into building our world might be quietly reflecting these big economic and societal shifts, just like duct silencers seem to be? It makes you wonder what other market reports out there might hold surprising keys to understanding the bigger picture.
It really does. Food for thought. Welcome to the deep dive. So what we do here is grab a stack of information today. It's some really interesting bits from a market research source, and we basically unpack it for you, pulling out the key insights.
And the topic today, well, it might sound maybe a bit niche, a little behind the scenes. We're looking at the duct noise silencer market.
Yeah, exactly. Think about the air systems in buildings, HVAC and all that. They can make a fair bit of noise, right? The rushing air. So these duct noise silencers, they're components designed specifically to, quiet that down.
Make things more peaceful.
Right. So our mission here in this deep dive is to sort of cut through the jargon and understand what's really driving this market, what the obstacles are, and also what cool innovations are happening.
Kind of a shortcut for you to get up to speed on something that honestly plays a pretty big role in our daily lives, even if it's invisible.
Totally unseen most of the time. But why should you, listening now, actually care about duct noise silencers?
Well, because whether you're, working in an office, maybe visiting someone in a hospital, staying in a hotel, or even just at home trying to relax.
Yeah.
That background noise level, or the lack of it, is really shaped by how well the building's ventilation system manages airborne sound. And these silencers, they're absolutely key to making spaces comfortable, peaceful, and efficient.
Okay, makes sense. Let's dig in then. Let's unpack this. According to the source material, what's the main thing, the real engine pushing this market's growth right now?
So the biggest driver, and it's something I think we can all relate to, is this growing focus on indoor acoustic comfort, just how spaces sound and feel.
Right. We're just more aware now, aren't we? How much background noise affects, well, everything. Our concentration, our stress levels.
Our well-being, productivity, even health outcomes in places like hospitals. It's becoming really clear.
So it's moving beyond just nice to have quiet to something more fundamental in building design. People expect it now.
Exactly. It's becoming almost non-negotiable. And that directly pushes the demand for effective noise control solutions like these silencers.
Okay, so comfort is number one. What else is adding fuel to the fire?
Well, alongside that personal comfort aspect, there's some serious regulatory push involved, too.
Ah, the rules and standards.
Yeah, think about organizations like OSHA, LEED for green buildings, ASHRAE for engineering standards. These groups are setting increasingly strict rules about acceptable decibel levels in buildings and workspaces.
So it's not just suggested anymore. It's becoming mandatory for compliance in many situations.
Precisely. Hitting those noise targets is critical, especially if you're building or running, say, industrial sites, hospitals, schools, big commercial offices. Duct silencers are often indispensable for the HVAC system.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Duct silencers are often indispensable for the HVAC systems to actually meet those requirements.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about the whole trend towards, smarter buildings, greener buildings? How does that fit in?
That's another big piece. As buildings become more technologically advanced and energy efficient, the demand isn't just for systems that save power, but also ones that are acoustically sophisticated.
Right, the whole package.
Exactly. The HVAC sector itself is booming, especially with high-performance buildings. And silencers are critical there, not just for keeping things quiet, which is part of that high-performance feel, but also because good airflow, which silencers need to maintain, is tied directly to energy efficiency.
Yeah.
You need both. Think about smart offices, modern hospitals, research labs. Quiet is part of the spec.
So lots of positive momentum, it sounds like. Plenty of reasons for this market to grow. But, no market grows without challenges. What are the main sort of bumps in the road highlighted in the source?
Oh, there are definitely hurdles. A really significant one is the cost, both the initial purchase price and the ongoing maintenance.
Ah, the money side.
Yeah. These things can be complex pieces of engineering. They often need to be customized for specific duct layouts, which adds design and manufacturing cost. And then they need regular cleaning, because if dust and debris build up inside, their performance drops off. So that's ongoing effort and expense. It can be a barrier, especially if the project budget is tight.
And I guess just getting people to think about duct noise in the first place might be tough sometimes. Is awareness an issue?
Absolutely. That's another key point. In, let's say, some developing regions, or maybe on smaller construction jobs, acoustics can often be an afterthought, something addressed late in the game, or maybe not at all.
Sort of seen as a luxury item?
Sometimes, yeah. Like it's only for the big flagship projects or luxury apartments. This lack of widespread awareness, or maybe prioritization, definitely slows down how quickly they're adopted across the board.
And then there's the whole issue of existing buildings, right? It's not always easy to just slot these things in afterwards.
That's a huge factor. Retrofitting. Many older buildings, they just weren't built with today's HVAC systems or acoustic standards in mind.
Space constraints.
Exactly. Limited space in the ceiling plenums, maybe awkward duct routing, systems that just aren't easily compatible with adding modern silencers. Trying to fit them in later can be really disruptive, complicated, and, again, expensive. That definitely puts the brakes on adoption in the renovation market.
Okay, so we've got the driver's comfort, regulations, smart buildings, and the challenges cost, awareness, retrofitting. But obviously the market is moving forward. It's finding ways around these. What are some of the cool innovations mentioned in the source material?
Well, one of the really interesting developments is how they're being designed. They mentioned the use of computational fluid dynamics, CFD.
CFD. Okay, what's that in simple terms?
Think of it like superpowered computer simulations. Engineers can build a virtual model of the silencer and then simulate exactly how air will flow through it and how sound waves will travel and be absorbed before they even make a physical prototype.
Ah, so it's like virtual testing to get it perfect?
Exactly. It lets manufacturers really fine-tune the internal shape, the baffles, the materials. They can optimize it to let the air flow through, easily minimizing what's called pressure drop.
Which means the fans don't have to work as hard, right? Saves energy.
Precisely. Less pressure drop, less energy used, so they can maximize the noise reduction while minimizing the impact on airflow efficiency. The key insight really is that this allows for incredibly specific, tailored designs.
Not just off-the-shelf sizes.
Right. Solutions designed for the exact needs of a particular system. The specific airflow rates, the space available. It's a move towards highly customized performance.
Wow, yeah, that does sound like a bit of a game changer for getting the best results. What about what they're made of? Any changes there?
That's another area highlighted. There's a definite push towards using more eco-friendly and also fire-resistant acoustic materials inside the silencers.
Makes sense with sustainability being so big now.
Totally. With things like LED and other green building certifications becoming more mainstream globally, there's a rising demand for components made from recycled materials, non-toxic substances, and materials that meet strict fire safety codes.
So hitting those green targets without compromising on safety or acoustic performance.
Exactly. It's about aligning with those broader sustainability goals.
Okay, interesting. And where is the demand for these more advanced, innovative types of silencers really taking off? Does the source point to specific sectors?
Yes. It specifically calls out a major surge in demand coming from data centers and also clean room facilities.
Data centers and clean rooms. Okay, those are pretty specialized environments. Why are silencers so critical there?
Well, in these places, think cloud computing hubs, semiconductor manufacturing plants, pharmaceutical labs. The requirements are, as the source puts it, mission critical.
Mission critical. How does HVAC noise affect, say, a server rack or chip manufacturing?
It's not just about people being comfortable, though that matters too. In these environments, the noise and even subtle vibrations from powerful HVAC systems can actually interfere with the extremely sensitive equipment they use.
Oh, I see, like precision instruments.
Exactly. Tiny manufacturing tolerances, high-density server operations, they need incredibly stable conditions. So advanced duct silencers are essential not only to keep the noise down for regulatory compliance and worker focus, but also to ensure the operational stability needed for these critical processes.
Got it. That adds a whole other layer of importance. Okay, so let's try and wrap up this deep dive then. We've looked into this maybe surprisingly complex world of duct noise silencers. We've seen the forces pushing it forward. Our basic desire for quieter spaces, stricter rules coming down, and that big push for smarter, greener, more efficient buildings overall.
And we've also acknowledged the hurdles, the things slowing it down a bit, the real costs involved, the fact that not everyone thinks about acoustics yet, especially in some markets, and the genuine difficulties of squeezing modern tech into old buildings.
But importantly, we've also seen how innovation is tackling these issues, whether it's using sophisticated tools like CFD to design hyper-efficient custom units,
or developing new materials that are effective, safe, and environmentally friendly.
Right. And these advances are opening up new possibilities and meeting really critical needs, especially in those high-tech environments like data centers and clean rooms where silence and stability are just paramount.
So maybe a final thought to leave people with. Considering how vital these controlled, quiet environments are becoming, in our increasingly loud and complex world, doesn't this relatively humble, often hidden component, the duct noise silencer, actually represent something quite significant? Maybe a quiet indicator of progress in architecture, engineering, and even how we manage technology itself.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.